In 1653, Isaac Walton, in the book The Complete Angler, wrote, "To catch a fish using fair methods was a superior thing." The journey you are about to take with Phil Atkinson and Grantley Gray without doubt redefines the outer edges of sport fishing. So sit back, hold on to your seat, because what you are about to experience truly is extreme fishing.
Each summer on the east coast of Australia, a group of very game fishermen match themselves against the great game fish of the Pacific in the battle zone where ocean and continent collide. Every sport has its extremists, a crazy few who would defy the boundaries of convention to create for themselves ever greater challenges. And in the heady world of sport fishing, such a group are known as land-based game fishermen, and this is their story. Hi, I'm Phil Atkinson, and I'd like to take you on a uniquely Australian sport fishing quest. Fishing for big game fish from the rocks, or land-based game as we call it, is one of the last frontiers of sport fishing. The ultimate game fish, the black marlin, is land-based game's greatest enigma. And the quest for marlin off the rocks is land-based game's greatest addiction.
Port Stephens on the north coast of New South Wales is one of the greatest game fishing ports in the country. But it's not just offshore fishing that makes this place special. The variety of pristine beaches and headlands on offer make it a great destination for shore-based anglers to wet a line. Huge cobia, hard-running tuna, and massive sharks that will eat just about anything all call these inshore waters home.
At the beginning of this new season, with game fishing boats reporting record captures of marlin offshore in the Cobalt Currents, we knew that with so much good water and billfish around, the land-based capture of a black marlin was at last a real possibility. But as great as the north coast rock fishing scene is for most game fish, the billfish are still too far from shore for us to have a realistic chance of hooking one. Here, marlin are only within reach of those with a big boat and a budget to match. With our quest for marlin off the rocks foremost in our minds, we knew the time was right to hit the highway once again and travel to a very special and familiar place. Our journey would take us south through Sydney, home of the 2000 Olympics, to a place where the cobalt blue Marlin Highway sweeps in hard against the coast.
Jervis Bay in the Shoalhaven region is just a day trip from Sydney, but is considered by many as land-based game's holiest shrine, because it's here that most of the world's land-based marlin captures have been made. This ruggedly spectacular and dangerous stretch of coast has incredible water depths to over 20 fathoms right next to the shore, with all manner of game fish patrolling the blue killing zone on the edge of the wash line. The seaward protruding headlands in this region intercept the warm offshore currents of the Pacific, tropical currents that each summer spiral their way down the east coast of Australia, from the black marlin spawning grounds off the Great Barrier Reef. Elsewhere, these currents could pass along the continental shelf up to 50 kilometres from the coast. But even with all these attributes, there are no guarantees. Each year on average, only a handful of marlin are landed from the rock ledges around Jervis Bay, with many seasons producing no marlin at all.
Our quest to capture, let alone film a marlin caught from the rocks, was certainly a long shot. Our travels to the fishing grounds aren't measured in nautical miles. A four-wheel drive is a land-based game fisherman's boat. It has to get you into some of the most harsh but awe-inspiring locations possible, then get you home again in one piece. Like any great fishing spot the world over, the harder it is to get to, the less fishing pressure it gets, and the better it usually is. There's no doubt the world of the rock fisherman is a breathtaking one, and the call of the rocks is strong. But don't be fooled, the rocks are as treacherous as they are inviting. And it's not without reason that rock fishing is one of the world's most dangerous sports. The moment you lose respect for the ocean, tragedy can be as close as the next wave. And it's here on one of Jervis Bay's outer ledges that our quest begins. Much like the twister chasers of America's Midwest, land-based marlin fishermen try to be where the action is by studying the forces of nature. Each season we attempt to predict and intercept the first fingers of coral current that lap against the sandstone ledges of the south coast. As in most challenging sports, preparation is the key to success. Even with all the odds stacked against them, as hopeful a group of anglers you'll ever find, the majority of land-based game fishermen will be geared up at all times to give themselves a fighting chance if a marlin does come their way. Having a bait in the water the week, day or very hour the warm current arrives can mean the difference between hooking a black marlin from the rocks or never doing so. And although today we didn't turn a reel, the current strength and watercolour told us that the marlin water wasn't far away. When chasing marlin from the rocks, you need all the help you can get, and today the coastal current facts backed up our own observations. With a large mass of warm water trapped directly off the entrance to Jervis Bay, we decided that tomorrow the ledges inside the bay itself might be a better proposition than the more current-dependent outer ledges we had been fishing. In some ways, the overcast and rainy conditions that greeted us on our first descent into the bay dulled and disguised the colours of the tropical water pushed in by an overnight wind change. But as the morning unfolded, we knew that at last our predictions were coming true. The current we'd hoped would follow us down from the north coast had arrived. Nestled in just behind Point Perpendicular on the northern headland of Jervis Bay, the tubes platform has a history that dates back to World War II, when the torpedo tubes, which gave the ledge its name, were built to defend the strategic deepwater anchorage. And although the tubes has never launched a torpedo in anger, it's certainly been the world's #1 launching pad for land-based marlin. Once you make it onto location, bait has to be caught during the night, then kept alive all day. There's no in-floor circulating live bait wells around here. On the rocks you'll learn to make do very quickly. Blow-up kiddie pools aren't just for hot summer days in the backyard. In a fisherman's household, anything useful for fishing can go missing. Nothing is safe, not even the kids' toys. We've found that water surface area is the key to keeping bait healthy, and a wading pool with a battery-powered aerator does the job well. Generally speaking, the crew who has the healthiest and most bait in storage if the marlin ever do arrive will get the hookups. Slimy mackerel are a gun, marlin and tuna bait anywhere in the world, and it's no different here. As I fed out my first bait, I wondered whether this season really would be any better than those that had gone fishless before it. Together with warm water, bait fish activity is the other magnet for bringing big game fish inshore. As with most bays adjoining deep water, Jervis Bay is a holding ground for at times massive schools of bait fish and is under tremendous pressure as a food source for both fish and humans. Things were looking really good, but so many times in the past, all the marlin indicators were on cue and we'd caught nothing. But little do we know, today was to be the beginning of the most incredible land-based marlin run of all time.
There we go, we've got a good fish on here. Good shark, good marlin, good yellowfin, I don't know. Money you'd have to be on a shark.
Bad call, would have done my dough this time.
Starting to smoke me up. We wanted a marlin off the rocks, but we wanted one we could land. This thing's just too big. Too big for 15 anyway. This will be a miracle if I get this.
The tubes is a great place to fight a fish, except for one thing. If a big fish does decide to head out to sea, it will drag your line around a headland getting there. And in my experience, rock beats plastic every time. This marlin knew exactly where the open ocean was and powered off deep, wasting no time or energy on surface acrobatics along the way.
This is called getting spooled. Got about 80 kilos of black marlin heading out to sea. I can't do a damn thing about it. I'm not a happy man. I really wanted this fish. I'm going to lose somewhere in the vicinity of 1,000 metres of 15 kilo here on the first black of the season off the rocks. This isn't enjoyable at all. I hate this.
Smoking me now. Got no mercy at all.
All is lost, either the hook's pulled or it's rubbed me out around the point. One thing's for sure, this line's all coming off. At least the fish hasn't got all that line hanging from its mouth.
No sooner had I finished reeling my line in when it was Jason's turn to get smoked up in the biggest way possible.
Slow up, yeah, please slow up. Slow up. Give me the gimbal, Dan. Give me back.
600 metres of line has never left a reel so fast.
You got a bit left. Come on, slow down.
Come on, slow up, slow up.
He's going to slow down. It's gone the right way. It's a good fish, mate.
Yeah, you got plenty. You got about 300 or 200 there still.
Another one of your rods.
We'll grab a couple lines, get a knife, and the same thing and a nice
Good fish, mate. Should have seen the take.
Slow up.
No, leave double on. We'll do I'll do a single double.
And when the end came, the line didn't just break,
See ya.
it melted.
See ya.
To see one big marlin hook from the rocks in a season is something special. To see two in one day is incredible. But when Phil Herbert then pulled up sold on number 3 for the morning, we all went into shock. Big Phil Herbert is a stand and deliver, no nonsense sort of guy, and deliver he did. But even he had to concede line to the first marlin of the day that played fair. By staying on the surface and running to the middle of the bay instead of out to sea, this fish gave Phil a spectacular early workout, but also a very real chance of capture. Nothing can really prepare you for the sight of a big black marlin jumping around in a bay so close to shore. Without blue ocean all around or a gleaming white game cruiser smoked up in chase, it paints a surreal and out of context picture. But it was a picture as events unfolded we would get to know well and love. Most big game fish hooked from the rocks have to be played out completely before they can be landed and have a poor survival rate for tag and release. If a rock fisherman is lucky enough to hook and land a marlin, he's probably earned it many times over many fishless seasons. 1 marlin to every 10 years of fishing is a better than average strike rate for land-based marlin chasers like us. During the last of the fight that most big fish are lost, and with his lifelong fishing ambition jumping around just out of reach, the temptation to lock up his drag and stand his ground is strong for Big Phil. But the patience that got him this far didn't desert him, and Phil plays the big billfish to the very end. And almost an hour after hookup, finally secures his prize. A land-based game fisherman's dream come true. A marlin off the rocks.
Congratulations, mate.
The significance of such a capture was not lost on anyone who was on the ledge, and we all shared in the magic of Phil's achievement. None more so than a fisherman's family, who know all too well the sacrifices made in the name of fishing.
This Marlin?
Yeah, that's
Marlin everywhere.
Marlin all over you.
He's running down the track going, my dad's a legend, my dad's a legend.
While we were targeting marlin, Danny had his sights set on something more tasty and found his mark. A dead slimy fed to the bottom did the trick.
Oh, nice red.
Hot red.
Oh, done. Oh, done.
4.5 kilos of prime South Coast snapper.
JB going off. Beakies and ready, that's what it's famous for.
You'd think that landing a marlin from the rocks was the difficult part over, but that's where your problems just begin. Thankfully, a mobile phone call to a mate with a boat and the good old Aussie promise of a slab of beer did the trick, saving what was left of Phil's back from a 2k slog through the thick bush dragging 9 feet of marlin. To us, using the boat was a bit of a compromise, but as sport fishermen, if we can't release fish, we do whatever it takes to make sure they're never wasted. The boat ride out ensured the fish was weighed and iced down quickly, without the addition of a gum leaf and gravel garnish. Back at the club, pulling the scales down to 81.5 kilos, the news of Phil's marlin sent the well-tuned land-based game grapevine crazy. And in an area where a bull bar is not just for bull, we weren't surprised to find a much bigger crew of hopefuls on the rocks the next morning.